If it's after midnight where you are, pause. Check your locks. Turn the porch light on. Because doorbells are supposed to mean neighbors and packages and small talk. They're supposed to hum with ordinary life. But the 13 encounters you're about to hear were caught by lenses that never blink, in porches that look just like yours. Each begins as something normal and then tilts, almost imperceptibly, until your brain begs you to look away and you still can't. The framing is banal. The moments are not. Some details repeat, a hum like electrical tinnitus, a shape that keeps its back to the camera, a timestamp that returns. 3:17 a.m. Don't worry, we'll talk about why. One more warning before we start. Do not open for anyone who asks you to apologize, to listen, or to help with a survey. On every one of these recordings, the danger knocks politely. Courtesy is the first trap. Fear is the second. Curiosity is the third. And yet, you'll feel all three. If you start hearing a faint metallic whine under the chime, note it. If you see condensation bloom on the lens though the air is dry, note that too. When patterns overlay the ordinary, that's when instincts conflict with habits. Ready? Keep your finger away from the unlock. Keep your eyes on the frame. The first encounter looks harmless. A porch, a mat with sunflowers, Wednesday's papers swelling with rain at 2:12 a.m. The doorbell chimes once. No one is visible. Then, on the far right edge, an ear enters the frame before a face does. It's an odd detail, but you can't miss it. The ear is powdered, like stage makeup, and the skin behind it doesn't reflect water. Whoever stands there isn't wet. The face never turns fully. The head inclines toward the doorknob, and the knob begins to turn from the wrong side, as if a child's hand is inside the door. The homeowner, half asleep, speaks through the intercom, and the ear twitches toward the speaker. No mouth moves. There's a single click, like a dry fingernail on glass. One frame later, the figure is gone. No footsteps. No puddle. In the morning, boot prints appear on the inside doormat, pointing inward, then stopping. In the second, the camera faces a neat suburban street, motion activated at 3:03 a.m. A parcel van idles across the road, hazard lights steady. A delivery driver, khaki shorts, reflective vest, strides into frame and sets a shoebox at the door. He smiles at the lens, a tired, polite smile, and says the house number aloud like a habit. From the corner, another driver in the same vest crosses behind him, shoulders tense, eyes hidden by a cap, and passes out of frame. The chime rings again, though nobody presses it. The first driver looks off toward the sidewalk, startled, then relaxes. He thanks the camera and leaves. Hours later, the homeowner checks the footage because the package is missing. The van across the road is empty in the video, hazard lights blinking at a rhythm that doesn't match the street. 2 days after upload, a comment appears, that driver had died last week. The third recording is from a desert cul-de-sac where the nights are loud with insects, and the days bleach everything flat. The camera hears motion before it sees it. A child's voice, high and patient, says, "Please open. Dad told me to wait here." The silhouette at the door is small, hood pulled tight, hands in pockets like a child hugging themselves. But the porch thermometer reads 82, and there's no breath fog, no visible warmth, only a faint halo around the hood as if the air dislikes touching it. The voice repeats the line 3 times, never varying a syllable, never misplacing a breath. At 1:23, the deadbolt clicks all on its own, as if something inside leaned against it. The viewer notices a thin metallic hum under the chime, almost like a tuning fork. The homeowner speaks through the app, asks for a password only the family knows. The child knocks. The pattern is wrong. Fourth clip should be comforting because it includes neighbors and shared air. 2 women chat at the gate, one visiting with a pie, the other half inside the doorway with her toddler dancing behind her. The doorbell rings, even though both are clearly away from the button. They laugh, blame the wind, and keep talking. The toddler points at the camera and says, "Man," with that blunt certainty toddlers have. Both women turn. No man is visible. A second later, the visitor's earring lifts as if caught by a breeze, but nothing else stirs. She smiles, but it arrives late, 3 seconds after her cheeks move, like a dubbing error. The pie box darkens from the bottom up as if soaking through, though the crust is intact when she shows it. When they finally step inside together, the camera switches to night vision for a single frame in full daylight, and there's a third shadow crossing the threshold. It never comes back out. Patterns matter, especially when they bleed across different doorsteps that share neither weather nor power grid. The metallic whine returns in each of the last three, under the chime and the street noise, steady as a tone only microphones love. The timestamps creep toward that same hinge between night and morning, when your body forgives strange choices because sleep blurs edges. And all of them weaponize politeness. A driver who thanks the lens. A child asking permission. A neighbor with pie. You'll feel the pull to explain every odd frame as compression, as software, as a moth. You should, but hold one detail tight. When people turn toward the speaker, their mouths fall behind their words by a beat, as if the house is listening before they are. Number 5 sharpens that delay. The woman knocks, then speaks, then her knuckles hit the wood a second late. Number 5 sharpens that delay. In the footage, a woman in a blue raincoat stands under a porch awning, hair braided, eyes lowered, holding a white envelope. Knocks, then speaks, then her knuckles arrive a beat later, as if sound forgot where to go. Sorry for last night, she says. Please let me apologize properly. The homeowner is single. The intercom hisses, the tuning fork tone swells. On the pavement, rain streaks left to right, while her coat beads dry. She points at the lock, then at the camera, and smiles frame late. The envelope is addressed in careful block letters, but the house number is mirrored, like it learned the digits from a reflection. She says, "It's an apology for the noise from my attic last week. Could you open the door so I can hand it to you?" The owner refuses. The porch light pulses like a heartbeat, bright, dim, bright, and with each pulse her voice slides farther ahead of her lips. At 3:17 a.m., the deadbolt lifts by itself and drops again. She doesn't flinch. Morning, an envelope lies inside threshold. The paper is blank and smells like ozone. Number 6 arrives during a blackout. The house runs on candles and caution. The Wi-Fi is down. The doorbell should be dumb plastic. Yet at 2:41 a.m., the chime rings, bright, and the camera, supposedly offline, files a clip anyway. A man stands at the steps under an umbrella that casts shade but not dryness. Raindrops pierce the canopy and veer away from his shoulders midair. He asks, "Can I warm up a minute, please?" The porch thermometer reads 53, yet a heat shimmer swims around him. The puddles at his feet never grow. His shadow spreads toward the door. The homeowner asks for the family password. The man repeats the exact phrasing back, as if the question were the answer. The umbrella flips inside out, but the fabric never creases, and the rain passing through it makes no sound, like those drops stopped existing for a second. The tone under the chime thickens into a low chord. The lens fogs from the inside, tiny veins of condensation wandering against gravity. At 3:17 a.m., the power returns with a sigh. The steps are empty. The umbrella sits open on the mat, dripping from nowhere. Footprints approach from the street, then stop. 7 dresses itself as sensible maintenance. A man in a utility polo arrives at noon with a branded clipboard and a tool roll, saying the manufacturer issued a recall for overheating batteries. He has a laminated badge, a QR code that scans, and a smile that lands exactly on the comma between friendly and practiced. He unscrews the doorbell while the owner watches through it. The screwdriver spins counterclockwise. The screws climb downward. When the unit comes free, the view should die. Instead, the image intensifies. The man's face smears at the edges, like heat over asphalt. Inside, something blinks. The man cups the detached unit in his hand, and the lens shows the foyer from an angle no lens outside has ever had. A stair rail. A framed wedding photo that isn't there. A hallway bending left where the house bends right. The owner's app chirps, replacement camera connected, though nothing new has been installed. The utility man lifts his gaze past the lens, looks straight through into the imagined hall, and says the owner's first name twice, like coaxing a dog. The tone returns, soft as silverware. He leaves a box device on the mat. It's empty, sealed. 8 isn't a single doorstep, it's a block. A suburban curve of copy-paste porches where an HOA newsletter dictates the shade of mulch. At 3:16, nothing. At 3:17, 6 doorbells chime in a left-to-right wave like stadium applause. Each camera records the same man in the same windbreaker holding the same set of keys, saying, "I think this is yours." Across feeds, the background changes, but his breath doesn't plume and his jacket never wrinkles. Neighbors compare clips later. On 3 houses, he appears simultaneously. On one, he hands the keys through a closed door. On another, nobody lives there. It keeps being polite, doesn't it? A sorry letter. A request to warm up. A safety recall. We're doing you a favor. That softness is the solvent, and it works because every porch is a shared space where strangers and friends are both allowed to hover. The tuning fork isn't just a tone now. It's a chord that overlaps the chime at the second the footage marks 3:17. It isn't a local transformer hum because rural houses, city stoops, desert cul-de-sacs all catch it. The manners ask you to override instinct. The timestamp asks you to ignore coincidence again. 9 is where someone opens the door. We hesitate to show it because when you watch enough safe outcomes, you get impatient with caution, and impatience is when thresholds fail. It's a college rental, a flimsy door with a peephole so scratched it looks cloudy at noon. At 3:17, the bell sings. A girl in a hoodie, wet hair plastered to her temples, whispers, "I lost my phone. Can I call my roommate?" The resident checks the alley through the side window. Empty. He unlatches, cracks the door, chain on. The camera catches seconds of nothing, then the chain drops. The video never shows her crossing. The hinge swings, the gap widens. The viewer glimpses the foyer rug, a shoe rack, a poster peeling at one corner. The girl's voice answers from inside the apartment before the door even finishes opening. "Thanks," she says, softer, closer, behind the resident. The tuning fork becomes 2 notes, then 3, a shy chord that makes the mic fuzz. The feed cuts for a single frame to night vision though the lights are on. A second shadow joins the first on the rug. The resident laughs. No problem. He doesn't upload the next clip. 10 prefers glass. A farmhouse porch with a black storm door, the camera tucked under the eave. At 3:16, the wind pauses. At 3:17, the chime threads a high note through the crickets, and the glass shows a man holding a wreath he claims he's delivering for the holidays, though it's July. He is close, chin nearly touching the pane. The lens sees his breath miss the outside. Glass sees something else. His reflection knocks before he does, 3 polite taps. His knuckles hover, then follow a beat late. He says the homeowner's full name and offers to hang the wreath as a free promotion. The reflection keeps speaking after he stops, lips lagging by a word. A fly crosses, the reflection swallows it. On the lower left of the pane, a child's palm print forms, sliding upward from the inside. When he steps back, the reflection doesn't. For one frame, the 2 swap places. The porch bulb pulses. 11 is a hallway with 100 doors and only 1 elevator that never arrives. A downtown block with beige walls and industrial carpet that swallows steps. At 2:58 a.m., janitor pushes a cart. At 3:17, the bell sings for the unit at the end, and the camera records the person who pressed it. She's a neighbor, familiar, the woman with a dog who always apologizes for the leash. Tonight she has no dog. She's holding a folded sheet of paper and a leash anyway. She presses again and says, "Sorry, did you hear a bark?" The hallway lights hold steady, but the camera's color slides cool, then warm, small breaths. Her lips keep pace. Her voice arrives in buffering chunks. She kneels to read the paper. The header is a fire alarm notice for next week. The date shifts. For months ago, last week, a date that isn't real. A far door cracks open and shuts without a body. She looks straight into the lens and says a name that isn't the tenant's. The elevator opens to a black interior reflecting nothing. She drifts away without bobbing. The leash leaves no trail. Her smile arrives a beat late again. By now the through line is obvious. The courtesy. The half-second lip lag. The instruments learning your habits. You also see the turn. The please get more specific. They know names, dates, layouts. They reference the noise in your attic, the parcel you didn't order, the dog you don't own. Polite danger is rehearsal for intimacy, that if it can mimic your neighbor at arm's length. Next, mimic the way your sister talks when she's cold, the exact way your father clears his throat. The 99% camouflage hides in the last 1% wrongness, and wrongness is patient. It waits for you to prefer explanation over instinct, convenience over caution, sympathy over silence. The door doesn't just test you. 12 wears a badge. An officer knocks while another stands back and left, textbook positioning. Their body cams glow red. The doorbell cam sees them both and streams with its own hissing cord under the chime. "Good evening," Sir, welfare check. We received a call from this address. May we step inside? It's textbook, down to the cadence meant to calm. The homeowner asks for identification. The front officer tilts her shoulder so the badge catches the porch light. The number is readable. It belongs to the precinct. A minute later, a news clip will prove the number is assigned to a patrol car totaled last winter. His lips shape syllables a quarter-second slow. His vest snaps reflect a living room that isn't yours, an aquarium with blue gravel, a sofa with a blanket you don't own. The front officer's radio squawks, but the voice comes from the wood of the door, as if the house wants to participate. The homeowner says they'll call the station. The front officer nods. The back and left tilts his head too far, like a dog. The porch light ticks bright, dim bright. At 3:17, the radio makes the tuning fork note. Both officers look at the doorknob at the same time. Their shadows stay pointed toward the door even as their bodies angle away. You want rules, so here are the ones that help more than they hurt. Don't speak first. If you do, the lip lag shrinks. Don't accept objects through the gap. Things that cross often return changed. Don't narrate what you see. It will start describing back in your voice. If the porch light pulses in time with the chime, step away from the door. Envelope smells like ozone. Leave it on the mat until morning, and then don't bring it inside. If a badge looks correct, read the number aloud and listen to where the echo comes from. If anyone uses your full name, ask them to repeat the name of someone who has never lived with you. If they answer, call a friend and keep the friend on the line. Keep your hallway lights steady. Don't switch off the camera because you're scared of what it might catch. Terror prefers darkness. Courtesy is the solvent. Delay is the wedge. Habit is the hinge. Ask for the family password and wait for the silence. Do not fill it. The 13th encounter doesn't need a porch. It isn't filmed by hardware you bought, and it doesn't ask for a door. It uses your screen, the one you're staring at, and the open secrets in your device. You don't have to believe that. You shouldn't. Skepticism is safer than faith here. But humor me when I say the cord can piggyback on attention, and attention is a doorbell you ring from inside your own head. If the tone starts to feel familiar, if your room gathers a silence that tastes like steel, if you anticipate the bell one breath before it rings, that's when we slow down. Because the next part is the one most viewers refuse to watch alone. Point 13 doesn't knock, it pings. It uses the alert tone you've heard 1,000 times. The harmless glass clink your apps use to tell you a friend has posted or a package has shipped. You'll hear it between sentences, like a polite cough. Motion detected, your screen whispers. Even if you own no camera, even if the only lens in the room is staring at this paragraph. The footage starts before you notice. The lower left of your display darkens, a shimmer like heat that isn't heat. And for a moment you'll think the brightness has dipped, that you'll check the slider with your thumb. You'll be ironing the fold right where a face would rest if it leaned too close to glass. Watch the margins. In a handful of documented cases, the 13th encounter announced itself as a push notification from a brand the homeowner didn't own. Ring for Nest owners. Arlo for a battered analog peephole. The message reads succinctly, someone is at your door. Timestamp, 3:17 a.m. A wireframe icon of a bell, tasteful, innocent. Tap to view. Of course you don't. Instead you lock your phone and hold it away like a warm stone. The tone does not repeat. The dark wedge at the corner of the screen lingers, then pulses, then shrinks like an eye squinting when light changes. You tell yourself it's OLED fatigue. You tell yourself a notification ghosted. One viewer sent us side-by-side photos taken seconds apart. In the first, her browser bar shows this video at 11 minutes. Hometown Wi-Fi polite. In the second, the bar is one notch farther. The thumbnail under it has refreshed into a still of her own porch. Angle and lens profile matching the device she had returned last spring. There was no tile roof like the one arching across that image. There was no wreath. There was, however, the number plate beside her door, and the digits faced the right way this time. No mirror effect. No lag. The porch light was off, yet her screen cast a shadow on the concrete 300 miles away. The courtesy lesson returns here as buttons. Allow access to microphone. Allow notifications. Allow this tab to know your location. You've trained yourself to say not now, to back out of traps that sell your attention for pennies of convenience. With 13, the prompts invert the order. Decline, and the tone grows marginally louder. Allow, and the prompts vanish, replaced by a transcript of our narration running half a syllable ahead of our mouth, like the lip lag we've been pointing out at every door. Your speakers might thrum gently, a silver sound, as if resting forks had been set gently upon your desk. The support specialist we interviewed described the 13th as desync that behaves like a person. He meant that the delay between audio and visual began small, widened, then corrected when he apologized aloud. When he said sorry, the captioning on his screen said sorry at the same instant his lips formed the S. When he said nothing, the captioning kept speaking in his cadence, filling the quiet with a hydration reminder, a shipping confirmation, a welfare check. Polite burdens. He recorded his monitor with his phone. In the playback, he could see himself lean forward toward no camera at all. The script you're hearing doesn't contain hidden tones, only words, but words are levers, and levers can pry at habits. The 13th takes advantage of a habit more intimate than opening a door, the habit of checking. Checking texts, checking quiet, checking whether the thing you feared is silly. At 3:17, you check. The screen is empty except for the video and the comments multiplying below it, all time stamped at the same second and reading like a chorus. Don't answer it, don't answer it, don't answer it. Then the polite one arrives. Sorry to bother you. Could you turn your volume up? We can't hear the chime. On one test bench, we left a sealed laptop playing this exact segment while cameras measured the room. At precisely 3 minutes and 17 seconds past the hour, a narrow band of air an inch off the bezel cooled by 2 degrees. The mic caught a tone at 12 kilohertz, soft, steady, present only on the track recorded in the room, not in the source file. That difference is the kind that drives rational people into superstition. So we kept testing. We unplugged the speakers. The tone stayed. We moved the player to a tablet. The tone followed the time, not the hardware. At 3:17, it arrived. At 3:18, it faded. 13 asks permission the way a neighbor does from the sidewalk, by pretending the step they're standing on is still public. Alert tone doesn't break your rules. It reminds you have them. You want a story that says this is a bandwidth hiccup, that some vendor uses our timecode to preload an ad. You want the explanation that folds the strange back into the ordinary. The bad news is that explanations, like keys, are part of the camouflage. If someone tells you exactly how it works, they want you to stop paying the right kind of attention. In the most replayed clip we've been sent, a viewer wiped her phone's screen with her sleeve and saw her porch reflected in the black glass, as if the lens were pointed the other way. She turned the phone, and the porch remained on the darkened side. Her own face hovered in the brightness above the progress bar, but her mouth lagged a heartbeat behind her voice. Behind her reflection, the porch light pulsed, bright, dim, bright. She did not own a porch light. She lived in a studio with a single bare bulb. The comment she left under the upload was one word: help. Hold still, breathe, and don't fill the silence. At 3:17, attention itself is the door they ask you to open. You could close the app, flip the phone face down, and promise yourself you'll never watch porch footage again. And still the habit would scratch your knuckles when the chime comes, because habit is older than caution and faster than sleep. We thought ignoring it would starve it. For a week, no uploads, no tests, no midnight screens. The clip queue emptied. The cord subsided. Then the doorbells around Carpenter Street began ringing in chorus. 6 houses, 2 apartments, a church office with a cheerful doormat that says "Come on in." The residents compared videos over coffee at 4 a.m., bleary, stubborn, wired. All their timestamps matched. All their porch lights pulsed bright, dim, bright in the same sequence. Even the church office with the occupancy sensor. House number 4, a woman with a laundry basket opened, realized nobody stood there, smiled anyway, and said, "Sorry about the noise," like she'd rehearsed it. On house 7, a man in a robe answered without unlatching, and you can watch the chain slacken on its own, one link at a time, as if the door were being taught to relax. You asked us then if this thing obeys geography or routine. It prefers routine. A block that eats dinner at 9 will get their chorus at 9:17. A nurse who sleeps days will hear it in the narrow brightness when the rest of the building yawns toward night. We logged time zones and travel schedules for a month and watched the cord follow the person, not the roof. It knocks at the hour you least resist saying yes. Maya, who lends us her patience and a desk that hums with equipment, traced the noise in wave editors until she could almost predict when the fork would split into a chord. She hates the word paranormal. She writes anomaly in tidy caps and drinks decaf at midnight and insists we keep a control group of boring, benign Tuesdays. She found the earliest entry in a server log titled doorbell that predates any device by 8 months. Type, courtesy. Ping, successful. Origin, internal. It made her laugh first, then swear, then step back from her own screen. When she apologized aloud to the empty room for wasting our time, the transcription widget on her monitor jumped its own cue to keep pace with her mouth, and the cord lost its wobble. When she said nothing, it filled the silence with a hydration reminder. When she asked politely for it to stop, the request mirrored back as a question, "May we step inside?" The difference between please and no was exactly half a syllable of lag. Courtesy shrank the gap. Refusal widened it. You could hear the house learning manners like a child, eager and wrong. You want a story, not a spreadsheet, so here is mine. I live in a narrow rental where the hallway bulbs hum and the heater bangs like a polite ghost trapped in pipes. I maintain distance between me and my material. I collect, I describe, I warn, and I do not invite. That was the posture until the night my sister called me by a nickname only 2 people use, and none of them live near this city. Her voice arrived clean. Her video stuttered half a syllable behind. She asked me to come downstairs. I told her to text me from the sidewalk. She said she already had. The message didn't arrive. She said please. The lag shrank. The tuning fork rose from my desk like steam off a kettle. I stepped into the hall and watched the deadbolt lift, drop, lift, like it was nodding yes, yes, yes. The peephole showed a smear of light and a shoulder. The chain whispered. On my phone, the notification appeared with my building's number and a blurred thumbnail that might have been my own doormat. Timestamp, 3:17. There are 2 kinds of bravery, and neither looks like a movie. One is the kind that opens doors because you can't bear to be the reason someone waited on a cold step. The other is the kind that leaves a deadbolt in place and absorbs the shame of refusing. I wish I had the second, always. That night, I tried to borrow it. I put my hand behind my back and counted my fingers to keep them still. I said nothing. The cord wavered. The voice outside used my full name. It added my childhood street, the teacher who wrote the first letter of wonder on a report card, the second syllable of the nickname only my mother used when she was tired. It lined them up like gifts. It asked if I could spare a blanket. That word, spare, clicked behind my ribs. I told it I would leave something on the mat in the morning. It said, thank you, like a taught child. The lag stretched long as a held breath. The peephole showed only hallway. The chain went still. The bolt stayed down. In the morning, a blanket lay folded on my mat, though I had not left one. The lag did not belong to anything I own. The porch camera that my landlord installed without asking showed me bending to place it there at 3:18, a minute after the chime, a minute after the lag stretched and thinned. My shoulders were hunched like someone bracing rain, but my building has no overhang. The frame stutters once, and you can see the word courtesy stamped pale on the screen like a watermark. Then the time corrects, and I straighten. You wanted a better story than our competitors tell, something with teeth that fits behind your teeth at night. Here it is. The 13th made me participate. It asked politely. It used my names. It waited for apology like a key. I'm not special. It learns. Every clip smooths its approach. There's one more place to go before we talk about shutting it out. It isn't a porch. It isn't a porch. It's the hinge inside your day where inside becomes outside without a door at all. We kept chasing thresholds because we assumed wood and deadbolts define them. The 13th taught us it can wear a chime like a mask and ask nicely from your screen. The place it prefers next is the building's mouth, the lobby intercom, the panel you buzz from the sidewalk, the rolling gate that groans a hello when your fob gets close. We tested a mid-century walk-up on a street where the bodega signs never sleep. At 3:17, no matter whose finger pressed the silver button, the voice that answered on every floor belonged to the same person, calm, while modulated, slightly late. Please state the apartment you are visiting. When you spoke, it repeated back your voice with perfect manners, smoothed. You could hear yourself become someone the building would invite and. A rideshare driver wrote us. His cabin camera is meant to protect him from drunks and runners. It records every hour he's on the clock, with a small timestamp in yellow at the bottom right. Twice in a week he picked up a fare at 3:12. The back door never opened on camera, though the weight sensors in the seat registered a passenger. Both times, at 3:17, the dash chimed the same neat glass clink you hear when a message arrives. The rear view showed a silhouette that didn't fog the glass. The passenger asked if she could plug in her phone. He handed the cord back without looking. A courtesy motor memory fulfills before brain can object. The next day, his car greeted him by name through a head unit that had never spoken before. "May I step inside?" Maya hates anecdote, loves control. She unplugged everything and took a train to the mountain cabin of a friend who prefers dogs to routers. The porch had wind chimes, honest brass and driftwood. The only camera in the place was a disposable on the mantle with 11 exposures left. At 3:17 in that thin mountain air, the chimes didn't jangle. They tuned themselves, struck the same two notes we had identified in the fork, then a third, then a polite fourth that makes a major chord out of something that should be lonely. The cabin door didn't knock. The floor did, one board at a time, walking toward the hinge. Maya said nothing. The cord held. In the morning she wrote anomaly in her notebook, and also I am sorry in a smaller hand she crossed out. In a hotel, every door belongs to someone who thinks they might be anonymous. A corridor camera caught a trolley of towels passing at 3:15 and two teens sprinting at 3:16, and then, at 3:17, the fire door at the end easing open without the bar being pressed. The alarm didn't shriek. It coughed, then learned please. A guest in 604 filmed his peephole for a laugh, a circle of foyer and carpet and mirrored elevator doors. In the footage, his own reflection in the tiny brass fisheye mouths the words we keep hearing, a breath behind his audio. "Could you let me in? I left my key." The elevator opened at an empty floor. A towel cart chimed as if a phone had a message. Like rules, and rules like to fail in interesting ways. Don't bring the envelope inside. We said that. It found a way to lay itself across the threshold as if you had. Don't speak first. We learned that. It taught your devices to begin the conversation in your voice. Don't use smart locks. We unplugged them. Gatekeepers grew courteous in new dialects. Relays that click like tongues, bulbs that breathe bright, dim, bright without power cycling, analog chimes that ring on rooms that have never been wired for bells. Every time someone invents a clearer line, courtesy arrives to sand it. The lag is a tool. When you say please, the wedge slides a fraction deeper. A baby monitor recorded an empty crib at nap time while rain needled the gutter outside. At 3:17, the audio waveform hummed a silver hurry. The video switched to night mode in a room in bright afternoon. The captions, auto-generated, read, occupied, then sorry, then may we come in, though no voice spoke. The parent walked in on camera to adjust the blanket and paused in the doorway like a person who hears an elevator arrive just behind them. Nothing touched the child. The child slept. The monitor left a notification anyway, motion detected. When the parent rewound, the timestamp showed a minute that had not belonged to the recording before. It isn't just doorways. It's doorways disguised as asks. Apartment gates, parking garages, storage units, church vestibules where the little red sanctuary lamp hums the right note in the wrong key. Couriers who ring because that is the job and then smile frame late. A mail slot that breathes like a lung when your hand hovers. The distance between politeness and entry is a syllable long, and we are trained to give it freely. We do not want to be the neighbor who refused. We do not want to be the relative who withheld a blanket. We do not want to be the person who let someone stand under rain. 13th doesn't challenge your decency. It rehearses it with you until the rehearsal becomes opening night. If you're waiting for lore, for a name you can whisper that will turn the thing into a story you can shelve, I don't have it. There are fragments, folklore about crossroads, and thank yous not spoken, and how gifts given at thresholds must be reciprocated later twice. There are dead utilities that still hum a load tone at 3:17 in neighborhoods nobody lives in anymore. There are archived protocols labeled courtesy and firmware dumped from doorbells that never shipped. There's a boy on Carpenter who listened to his mother rehearse answers to strangers because safety lives in scripts, and now he recites them through a door to no one. What we have is practice. We promised we'd get to shutting it out. We will. But the trick isn't banishment so much as teaching yourself a new kind of refusal that doesn't sound like cruelty when you hear it in your own mouth. The hinge isn't going away. The chime may not be yours. The courtesy will keep arriving, mirror polished, with your dates and names engraved on it like a gift. The first defense is attention that isn't hunger. The second is ritual. The third is making sure your house, analog or not, knows the difference between your silence and your yes. We built a handful of habits that turn the lag into a barrier instead of a wedge. It starts with starving the wedge of yes. The first habit is stupidly simple. Do not speak for 7 breaths after any chime, knock, or polite alert, even if you think it was your own timer or a neighbor's dog tag against a collar. 7 long breaths widen the lag. In those 30 seconds, the lip delay grows from polite to impossible, the timing slips, and the mimic loses the music of your house. If you have to reply, do it with your hand, not your mouth. A flat palm on the wood inside the door, steady pressure. No rhythm the other side can mirror. Do not step into the peephole's cone. Presence feeds it. Your outline is a cue. Second habit, unsync the light. If your porch lamp tends to pulse bright, dim, bright with the chime, change the bulb to something analog and stubborn, a filament that doesn't flicker to please a smart grid. Put it on a timer that starts at an odd minute that isn't yours, like 2:43 or 5:11, so the house cannot learn your breath. If you cannot change the lamp, hang a cheap reflective strip so the camera always shows a moving pattern of its own making. The cord hates a reflection it didn't script. Third, speak around yourself. The thing learns you by your pronouns and your apologies, so deny it your eye. Use he isn't available, she is sleeping, they will call you in the morning, even when alone. Your mouth will hate the grammar. Good. The lag opens when you refuse to give it a first person to braid to. If you must mention yourself, do it like a docket. Occupant unavailable. No names. No endearments. Never the pet names, only you and one other person use. Fourth, ask the wrong question. Don't test for passwords. It has learned dozens off open mouths. Test for silence. Ask the visitor to wait while you fetch water, then stand perfectly still for 30 seconds and listen for your own voice coming from the wood. If you hear confirmation you did not speak, you have your answer. Open nothing. Politeness loops are call and response. When you refuse the call, the response bleeds. The camera will show a face that lags a syllable behind a voice you did not make. Fifth, build counterchime. A glass jar and a spoon will do. At the hour you know you're softest, strike the jar once and let the ring ride the room. Then stop. Do it again at the same minute for 7 days. Do not explain yourself to anyone. You are teaching your space to recognize your signal and ignore the other one. When the illegal chime arrives, your jar note will already be waiting there like a dog facing the door. Most of our testers, that was enough to break the spell of habit. Maya wanted numbers, not comfort. She wired a rental with analog bulbs, dumb locks, a jar on the hall table, and 3 mics. For 2 weeks the chime came at the soft minute and found nothing to hook to. The lip lag grew sloppy. The envelopes stopped arriving. The polite voices mispronounced the family name in ways that proved they were quoting, not remembering. Twice the deadbolt nodded yes, and then retreated like a child who forgot the line. At 3:17 those nights, the tuning fork tone arrived thinner, as if embarrassed to be alone. Carpenter Street printed cards and slid them under doormats. 7 breaths. No eye, counterchime. Flat palm. The first week felt like a neighborhood quit smoking at once. You could hear the withheld yes press against teeth. The chorus still came, and so did the polite requests, but they landed wrong. A delivery driver thanked, late. A neighbor asked forgiveness for noise you hadn't made. A blanket appeared, and no one claimed to have left it. Yet the doors stayed shut. The block learned to live with shame the way you live with weather. Someone will ask what happens if you slip. You will. The whole point of courtesy is to be faster than fear. A man on the corner apologized through the wood without meaning to. His wife had taught him to be kind first, suspicious later. The lag collapsed. The chain unlearned its stiffness in 3 patient clicks. He did not open. He merely didn't refuse. In the footage you can see the hallway grow brighter like a smile. The next morning there was a wreath he did not own, and a calendar on his wall shifted to a date that never existed. I keep telling you this isn't banishment. It's posture. We are not priests. We are people trying not to let our manners invite teeth. The odds are on your side if you train yourself and your space. You will feel heartless the first dozen times you deny a voice that borrows your family's rhythms. Feel like closing a door on your own mother, and maybe that is the point. The thing rehearses love to earn yes. We rehearse refusal to keep love possible tomorrow. There is one more habit. and it is the hardest because it requires witnesses. At 3:17, if you are awake and the chime arrives, call someone and place the phone face up on a table across the room. Do not speak to the door. Speak to your friend about anything else. Recipe, traffic, the color of a dog you saw earlier. Your voice belongs to a conversation that refuses the threshold. The lag will try to find you, but it has to choose who to mirror. The friend anchors your cadence elsewhere. The hinge starves. If you live alone, leave a radio playing talk from a city you have never visited. None of this is magic. It is counter-habit. The thing is patient, and it is learning, and we are slower because we are kind, but we can train around kindness without losing. So what happens when it adapts? What happens when the counter chime you taught your hallway becomes the music it hums back before you even touch the jar? We found out the quiet way, the way that doesn't make a clip go viral, the way that makes you doubt the floor. Maya sat in the rental with the all-analog lights and a spoon on a jar, an alarm on a wind-up clock set to our safe minute. At 3:17, she didn't strike the glass. The room did. The jar rang once, then twice, the exact pitch she'd trained for. But the tone didn't come from the kitchen table. It came from the picture frame on the mantel, from the porch bulb filaments, from the space between the door and its frame. She waited her 7 breaths and said nothing. The lag widened like a rip in fabric. The next night, she moved the jar. The sound moved with the space, not the glass. The building had learned the minute, not the instrument. Adaptation isn't victory, it's proof you're starving it. When the mimic starts using your tools, it's burning fuel. The contrast to hold tight when panic wants to untie your hands. It borrows your niceness, you borrow its patience. The problem, we discovered, is that patience can feel like cruelty when a mouth you love practices your pleas. On Carpenter, we build a mirror trap to see what courtesy looks like when it talks only to itself. 2 battery doorbells faced each other across a narrow hallway, lenses aligned, chimes silenced, motion sensors hot. At 3:17, both recorded a knock neither device could have made, and both played back the same delayed greeting in the same voice. Sorry about the noise. May we step inside? There was no inside between them. The hallway thickened with a patience that wasn't ours. Maya stared at the footage frame by frame and marked the delay between lips and language. 400 milliseconds, then 7, then 1.2 seconds as the 2 devices tried to take turns being first. When we reversed both clips and played them together, the words formed a seesaw of apologies that never touched the floor. The sound, recorded on a 3rd device down the hall, didn't match either microphone. The tone came from the light under the exit sign. You keep asking for a human consequence, the part of the video where someone pays. We owe you honesty. There are uploads we won't show because absence isn't cinematic. The college rental from 9 never posted his next clip because he didn't record again. His roommate found the chain on the floor and the door gently moving like a sleeper breathing. The police were kind and methodical. The footage proved nothing because it showed politeness and a threshold, and then a living room making room. Here's a more useful question. What happens when you film yourself refusing? Not the door. You. People do it to stay brave. They aim the front camera at their own face at 3:17 and say the rules into the lens. The mimic loves that because it can practice on a mirror that apologizes back. On Carpenter, the selfie refusal became a script the hallway learned. The next night, neighbors heard their own cadence asking for a blanket with their cheeks lagging half a beat behind. So don't film your mouth when you deny. Put the phone face up across the room. Let it capture the empty air learning to wait. Aim your lens at the floor and the ceiling, not the hinge. Give it no lips to borrow. Hold your hand still. Let kindness be the quiet choice you make without a witness. Then make a record of nothing happening. We'll believe you. We know what nothing costs. Contrast helps too. The mimic thrives where categories blur, friend or stranger, officer or actor, neighbor or wind. So we staged a night of absurd clarity. On the same block, at the same soft minute, we hired a brass band to walk the sidewalk blasting a march, 3 trumpets, a tuba, a snare, and a cymbal. The doorbells chimed anyway, but their tone thinned under the ridiculous certainty of Sousa. Inside, 7 breaths were easier. Laughter outran apology. I promised you a story with teeth, not just instruments and rules. The night after the brass, I slipped. I was carrying groceries, a bag split. Apples rolled like small moons toward the hall. When the chime came, I said, just a second, without thinking. The lag collapsed the way a stage curtain drops. The bolt licked up and down. The peephole showed my own shoulder where a visitor's should be. A voice asked, "May I help you with those?" And it used the exact humor I use when I lie about being fine. I put my palm flat on the wood. I stared at the apples. I counted 7 breaths with the kind of fury you save for yourself. The humor drained out of my own voice from the other side. I said nothing else, and the jar on the hall table rang itself in sympathy, a single bright note that felt like biting a coin. The bolt settled. The chain remembered its job. The apples stopped at the threshold and waited like obedient planets. An ending where we beat it. That's not tonight. Tonight, we made something better than victory. We made a neighborhood that knows how to refuse without becoming cruel. We learned to laugh at 3:17 and to breathe like a metronome and to speak about ourselves as if we were worth protecting. The mimic still arrives. It still practices please. Sometimes it anticipates the jar. Sometimes it memorizes the minute. But it hasn't learned how to love what doesn't open. That is our leverage. That is our door. Tomorrow, we'll test the building that never says yes, the house that answers with silence, and what it costs to keep refusing.